10 minutes later, we had already packed our few belongings and were saying goodbye to Kagome. Again, with a clear mind now. Are you sure? If it'll somehow hurt Kobayashi Corporation, you can count on me. At the very least, they won't be happy. Looked around the restaurant, but nobody was paying attention to us. The documents are under the futon. Got it. When you arrive in the USSR, just call here and ask for Uemura-san. But your phone might be tapped. Besides, the international call would immediately raise suspicion. Yeah, I guess. Kagome thought a moment. Then I'll just ask Kyosuke to drop by your place. The fat guy? A man with a big heart. I smirked and gave her my hand. Kagome was embarrassed at first, but shook it nonetheless. Himitsu bowed deeply.
Thank you for everything, and thank your grandfather on our behalf.
Sure, except after yesterday he'll be sleeping until noon. We walked outside. I called Kyosuke from the nearest telephone box, gave him detailed instructions, what, when, and where. Of course, there was a chance they were tapping his phone as well, but over our years of friendship, we came up with all sorts of words and phrases whose real meaning was known only to us. Nice. With that, all preparations were complete. I sat on the short stone barrier that separated the pavement from the water. This doesn't seem very safe, especially next to a restaurant where they sell alcohol.
Did I really get drunk yesterday?
Himitsu stood next to me, twisting her hands in anguished realization. A little, maybe. Still, there was something wrong with this plan. Or maybe the whole plan was rubbish. Irina had agreed to my conditions too easily. Himitsu was able to steal those documents too easily. Kagome was too confident that the documents would be safe with her. Ooh. God damn it, he's saying all that. He's like, everything's falling into place too easily. Like, yeah, if we think back to what happened in Kagome's route, when things, fell into place too easily, it was a sign that there was something we didn't know. It wasn't that the plan was working, there was something we didn't know going on behind the scenes. Didn't necessarily mean the plan was working. But he's right. Himitsu got those documents, there was no issue, she wasn't tailed, no one got the drop on her. After he kidnapped Irina, they just practically agreed to everything. Bada bing, bada boom. The fact that, he barely knows Kagome at this point, and she's just like, oh yeah, no, I'll take care of those documents, I got you. That does actually feel very Kagome, though. It's like she said, it's like, as long as it screws over Kobayashi Corp, yeah, no, you can count on me. Like, yeah, no, that definitely seems like Kagome. Even like the pettiest little inconvenience she can have on them, she'd be down for it. But I feel like he has the right to be paranoid here. Why the fuck did my model freeze up? How long has that been like that? Why had I even agreed to all that? Was I just carried by the flow? Too tired to think for myself? There were too many variables, and I couldn't put them together in a single understandable system.
Nico-kun?
Himitsu took me by the hand, but said nothing else. What else was there to say? We could only wait. Finally, a car appeared in the distance, slowly driving in our direction. I automatically stood up and walked towards it. Who else would be here at such an early hour? Himitsu was holding my hand tightly and walking next to me. Holy shit. When I had just 20 meters until it reached us, another black sedan leaped out of an alley, tires screeching. A man holding a machine gun leaned out the car window and opened fire on the first car. Gunfire sounded like someone trying to play a simple tune with spoons. Bullets pierced the windows, glass raining down in a fine mist. Almost immediately, the first car returned fire. The whole scene took no more than a couple seconds, but I froze, holding Himitsu's hand tightly, unable to do away with the feeling that was the odd element out in this picture. As if I just accidentally found myself on the set of an action movie and was afraid to leave so as not to disturb the actors. A moment later, both cars had become sieves, and the gunfire had fallen quiet. Somewhere on the edge of my conscious self, I started to hear a voice, a deep bass, as if someone turned an equalizer to low frequencies.
Nico-kun?
Then louder and clearer.
Nico-kun!
I came to my senses and broke into a run, dragging Himitsu along. I didn't know if anybody was left alive after all that shooting, but if they were, they'd be coming after us. We were rushing past opening stores, past fish shelters, slipping into alleys and side streets. Catching surprised looks, we didn't drop our speed. Two cars now resembling Swiss cheese were left far behind. Finally, I stopped to catch my breath. Himitsu was covered in sweat, her hair disheveled and stuck to her flushed face.
What was that, Nico-kun?
In any case, my suspicions had not been unfounded. Everything couldn't go that smoothly. I don't know. Apparently the Russians got attacked, or they attacked someone.
So what are we going to do now?
We can't rely on them anymore. Money would have been so useful now. We need to get out of the city, then we'll see. Still had some change in my wallet. I have to buy 2 tickets out of Tokyo. Then we would act according to circumstances. Himitsu was staying still and coming to her senses. One thing was clear. We were being hunted. It didn't even matter by who. Most importantly, they wouldn't leave us alone. We had no one else to count on. Perhaps the arena made a mistake, or maybe it was something else. These questions would only be of interest to conspiracy theorists. I felt like an object, a mere addition to the papers left at Gifts of Sea. That folder was valuable in and of itself. People were ready to kill and die for it, while our lives were expendable. Think again. Did you notice anything unusual yesterday at home on your way back? Try to remember everything. Maybe you saw someone suspicious.
Nikko-kun, I don't know. I'm scared.
I hugged Himitsu and held her close, feeling her whole body tremble. My main task now is to protect her, not to get the truth out of what had happened. It seemed to be quiet, no traces of that slaughter. Someone definitely needed us. Alive. If we could simply give those damn documents away. Suddenly I noticed suspicious-looking men in black suits in the distance. 6 a.m. on a Friday in this district, and clothes fit more for a business meeting didn't make for a good combination. Luckily they were far enough, and it was unlikely they'd notice us behind the vending machine blocking their line of sight. We have to go, I say quietly.
Oh, where, Nikko-kun?
Himitsu seemed completely desperate. For starters, forward. I had no time to persuade her, so I just had to drag Himitsu along by force. God damn. A few suspicious guys, easily identifiable as Japanese agents, were hanging around the train station, barely even trying to hide. We had been skillfully backed into a corner, every escape route systematically cut off. You might wonder what's easier than hiding in a massive city. Not when several intelligence agencies are hunting you. The Japanese were guarding the way ahead, while the Russians most likely were on our heels. I was no longer so confident about their intentions. On one side, we were cut off by the sea, while the other was blocked by dense rows of short houses, crowding like an army of doors at the foothill of Erebor. I could already tell this was the end, but I didn't want to scare Himitsu even more. The situation was getting more crowded. It was a good opportunity to disappear into the crowd, but at the same time, it would be harder to notice our pursuers. Besides, for me, with my height, it was nearly impossible not to stand out in a group of short Japanese people. I decided that we'd better avoid open spaces. We went off the street leading us to the station, and found ourselves in a straight narrow alley that was going in the same direction for a good 100 meters. If enemies were to appear on the other end, we'd have nowhere to run. Look back, the black suits were approaching.
Nikko-kun?
Himitsu looked detached. Apparently, she had run out of energy to worry and partially come to terms with what might happen.
Will they kill us?
No.
Then what will they do?
No, they'll probably kill me. Couldn't find the right words to respond, and it made no sense to keep repeating that everything would be alright. We walked quickly and forward, and soon successfully reached the end of the alley. Then came a strong punch to my gut. I doubled over, saw sparks before my eyes, lost my balance, and the whole world grew dark for a moment. Next second, I was already being dragged somewhere. I found myself on the backseat of a car, where Himitsu's cry made me come to my senses.
Nikko-kun!
A huge man was holding her tightly by the arms. Help! Murder! I shouted instinctively, but they paid no attention. They were acting quickly and coherently. Professionals slipped through my mind. While I was trying to break free, my brain was feverishly analyzing the situation. Himitsu was being dragged away from the car.
Nikko-kun!
She shouted for the last time before somebody put a handkerchief on her face. With chloroform, probably. The next second, she went limp in the hands of the goon holding her. I made one more attempt to break free, but somebody immediately handcuffed me. What are you doing, bastards? We had a deal. I wasn't silenced as painlessly as Himitsu, with a hit to the back of my head. Yeesh. Already fainting, I realized that the few words I heard at the moment were not in Russian. Great. Well, the fact that they're separating them, chances are that's probably the Japanese. That's how my story ended. Or the words a writer would have put at the end of a novel about the life of Nikolai Anakin. Indeed, in the real world, unlike in books, most stories don't have a happy ending. The blind sequence of accidents knows no compassion, love, or sympathy. The death of one human, thousands or millions on the scale of even our backwater planet is just a matter of chance, no more significant than winning the lottery. I made my bet, and I lost. I trusted my compatriots, and was deceived by them. Cold sweat burned my back. The total darkness I was in numbed my sense of reality. It felt like I'd already died, and only an intense headache proved me wrong. It's hard to say how many hours I spent unconscious. The room where I was kept resembled a closet more than anything, with no windows and a single metal door that let no light through. I wheezed, to which my entire body responded with pain. Himitsu. We had been separated, and I was left alive. So they still needed me for something. Memories began to return, each a burst of acute pain in the back of my head. It seemed that after they had stunned me, one of them said something. But what exactly? I didn't remember the face of the attacker. He may very well have been wearing a mask. There was the blow, and then the curtains dropped and darkness came. Like in a theater. I was going through that moment again and again in my head. The blow and the words in the unfamiliar language. The blow and... drive. 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 In English. I kind of figured. Part of me was thinking, like, yeah, they think, you know, Russians and Japanese, but like there's still that third party there. Then the door opened. The entire room was drowned in bright light, reached into every corner and seemed to be filling me from inside. I squeezed my eyes so hard they hurt. There was no escaping it. Somebody grabbed me by the arm, pulled me back onto my feet with one strong jerk. Then I was led through long, narrow corridors. Finally, I was sat on a chair, uncuffed, and heard the sound of a door closing behind my back. I was alone in the space that resembled the interrogation room of a police station. My eyes were still blinded by white light, but it was as if I could feel the presence of someone in the corner, hidden in shadow, with my skin. Nikolai. Yep. Soon, Catherine's mother herself appeared in the light. It is a pity to meet in these circumstances. She sat behind the table across from me. Himitsu. My voice sounded hoarse and strained as if it didn't belong to me. What have you done to her? She's safe for now. What will happen next depends entirely on you. What about the Russians? Well, we got captured by them. If we had been late even by a minute, that would have been the case. She pulled a pack of cigarettes out of her pocket and shook it thoughtfully, as if choosing which to take. Okay, so it was the Russians that were pulling up. Americans swerved in out of nowhere, shot them up, and nabbed Nikolai and Himitsu. Gotcha. Perhaps if we had, you would have already been in Moscow instead of having this conversation. Tough luck. What do you need from me? I've already told you I don't have any documents. The reality of the situation started to get through to me more and more clearly, and with it came anger. I was willing to believe that last time, but Ito's daughter has fixed that unfortunate omission. What? You still don't see the entire picture? She laughed and finally lit the cigarette. Ito was just waiting for her return. And by lucky coincidence, she took with her the documents the Russians needed. They don't present any particular value or threat to us or the Japanese, but they do provide an opportunity to accuse the USSR of industrial espionage. Your parents, unfortunately, left this world too early to play that role. How dare you. I jumped up from the chair, but the look she gave me made me quickly realize it wasn't even worth trying. So, the documents are in the KGB's hands. Now we only need to capture the traitor who finished the job his parents couldn't. Finally, all the pieces of the puzzle fit together. This was their plan from the very beginning. From the very beginning, they've been pushing me to cooperate with the KGB, setting everything up to leave me no choice but to agree to Irina's terms. Fuck. What? Everything had been planned. That's why everything went perfect. That's why everything went perfect. Because it's exactly what they wanted. There's only one piece that was still out of place. If everything is as you say, what was all that shooting about? A bit too much noise for a secret operation. Apparently Cheryl Winters wasn't overjoyed by the question. And the Russians decided to eliminate the witnesses at the last moment. So they were the ones who started shooting? Yes. How very convenient. Although I couldn't rule out the possibility that it was the truth, I doubt it. Alright, so what's next? Sounds like you need me alive for the show trial. The son of Russian spies following in his dead parents' footsteps. Can already imagine the headlines. I only had one thought in my head. I had to protect Himitsu. At any cost. Let's say I do everything you want me to. You aren't in a position to make demands. You won't make me talk by force either. Depends on the cost of your silence. For instance, is your girlfriend's life a high enough price? I only grit my teeth. They really did hold all the aces. Do everything like you're supposed to and she'll live. Try to play your own tune and both of you will be feeding the fish in Tokyo Bay. How's that for straight talk? Where are my guarantees? Oh, sorry, I forgot them at home. she said in a tone that immediately made it clear where Catherine got her sarcasm. Should I arrange for an official ceremony to deliver them to you? Nikolai, you seem to be misunderstanding things again. I'm not here to bargain with you. I'm explaining how things are going to be. She leaned over the table and coldly looked me in the eyes. I wanted to ask about Kagome too, but there was a chance that she had nothing to do with it all, and I would just pointlessly expose her to danger. So all this time, Ito. The Japanese are good at one thing. They're obedient, and if they're in the right place, don't ask questions. Has he really been using his daughter in cold blood? I didn't know if his daughter hasn't been following his instructions. She squinted slyly and reminded me of Catherine again. If you're going to lie, at least make your lies believable. She smirked and leaned back in the chair. It's good to have a person you can trust so blindly. No way. She wasn't going to make me doubt Himitsu. Should have known that the Japanese hadn't engineered this all by themselves. The only thing we need from you now is your cooperation. You get 10 years and maybe an early parole. And then we'll discuss your life from there on. Is this your way of bribing me? Why, it's so rude. Stimulating you is how I'd put it. Preparing a nice place for you to come back to. On the one hand, the offer wasn't as bad as you may think. They'd leave Himitsu in peace and were even offering some possible help in the future. Of course, I had no reason to trust them, but Catherine's mother was right about one thing. I was in a position to bargain. So what do you say? The temptation to accept her offer was too great. There was still something stopping me. A hunch, you could say. Mrs. Winters clearly wasn't telling the entire story, otherwise why bother with me at all? That meant that I had a choice, at least on paper. I had to make it very carefully. Oh shit! Oh shit! Oh shit! Oh shit, boys! Oh shit! One final choice? Oh shit! Actually, I just wanted to check something. I have hints turned off, right? Oh, I do not. Okay, let's fix that. Because I don't want to know if I clicked the right or wrong answer. I don't want to know. I don't want to know. We've saved. It's like Nikolai said, he has this suspicion. He has a choice. I don't know what to do, guys. You know what, boys? You know what, boys? Boys, you know what? You know what? You fucking know what? Turn on that monitor recording. You know what? Watch this shit. We're gonna head over to Google. We're typing motherfucking coin flip. Watch this shit, boys. The coin flip says heads. You heard it here first, folks. The coin flip has landed on heads. This ain't the first time I've done this. Won't be the last. And honestly, coin flip in the past has not fucked me over. It's led me down the right choices. Heads being first option, tails being the second. We're gonna agree. We're gonna agree. Let's see where we go. Maybe I just landed myself a nice bad end. Maybe fate, decided to bend me over this time, but let's find out. Let's say I cooperate. What happens next? I knew you would do the right thing. She smiled victoriously and stood up. Now I need some time to handle a few details. Wait for me here. She walked out of the room and locked the door. In her every movement and gesture, there was an unusual elegance. Cheryl Winters' looks alone killed any desire to defy her. I was left alone, the silence broken only by the fan pushing stuffy air around in the room. Let it be. Even if I had to lie, betray my parents' memory, it was all for Himitsu's sake. Right? I was pacing around the room, unable to decide whether or not I'd done the right thing. I don't even know, homie. I don't even know. Both choices really just seemed like they were fucked in the end. Like, if you deny, you get dumped in the fucking ocean, you dead. if you agree, you end up in prison. I don't see a good way out of this, so I let fate decide. The thought wouldn't leave me alone, an itch from which there was no salvation. Had I become a traitor by agreeing to everything Mrs. Winters wanted me to say? Or was I just saving my own life? What worth are our ideals when no one would know about them after my death? I'd have to live with it? At least I'd live. And still, something was eating at me. Guilt, or my own powerlessness. To lose control over your own life, to be forced to make decisions that disgust you. Isn't that the scariest thing there could be? A slave who not only eschews at striving for freedom, but justifies and eulogizes his slavery. Such a slave is a lickspittle and a bore. Wasn't I only trying to justify my collaborationism? But it's easy to worry over morality when you aren't faced with this kind of choice. It's convenient to label others when you aren't risking your own life. I agreed to Mrs. Winters' terms, to save myself and Himitsu. The reason would be soon forgotten, only the consequences would remain, with which we would have to live. But at least we would live. The door opened without a sound and Catherine's mother entered the room. "Sorry to keep you waiting," she said politely and sat across from me. "Here's what will happen next." She told me what I had to say and how I had to act. Most of the words sounded like lines from a dictionary. They carried no meaning out of context. I was positive I would hear it all again, more than once. "Nikolai, have you understood everything?" "Yes," I replied and lowered my head. I had no strength to look her in the eyes. "Come on, cheer up. The hardest part comes first, but you'll get used to it." Get used to what? Prison life? I didn't have the courage to say that aloud. Mrs. Winters looked confident, which was natural, since she was in complete control of the situation. I could only wonder how this woman had planned everything so skillfully, taken every possibility into account, and predicted the actions of every party. Now was just another pawn in her game. "After I do all that, will you let Himitsu go?" "You can be sure of it. I give you my word." She bared her teeth in a semblance of a good-natured grin. I knew well it was just the gracious gesture of a lion toward the lamb it only kept alive to be eaten the next day. Then there was an endless series of interrogations. First, the Americans prepared me for what I had to tell the Japanese. Days passed by one, monotonous and identical. I wasn't let outside. When I first got out into the city, wearing a suit that didn't fit, of course a gray one, winter had already come. At that moment, Nikolai Anakin was ready to answer any question regarding his spying. He could even effortlessly cheat a polygraph test. Over the time I spent in captivity, I somehow came to terms with what I had coming. I persuaded myself that this was the only way. The only chance to save myself and Himitsu. A person who willingly rejects their freedom loses the very meaning of their existence. Their attitude towards life, themselves, and others change irreversibly. Freedom of choice, the ability to make decisions independently, and thus rise above natural instinct, allows us to become something more than intelligent monkeys able to hold a stick. Monkeys are also able of choosing a partner for mating and following instinct, protecting their kin, but the concepts of love and sacrifice are alien to them. Meanwhile, a human, when placing the interests of another individual above their own, and doing so consciously, rises above its animal nature and establishes the supremacy of spirit over matter. From there on out, our conscious self begins to define our path, not the instincts of an animal. Most of all, I was tormented by contradictions. Freedom, happiness, love, freedom. Had I done the right thing by sacrificing my freedom, and wouldn't that sacrifice be useless? But everything progressed at so fast a pace I barely had any time to think about it. The Japanese interrogators turned out to be much more meticulous than the Americans, and although I had been prepared for that, would have been able to break anyone. Fortunately, I just had to say what they wanted to hear, and all the interrogations boiled down to me confirming that my words were true. It's common knowledge that the easiest thing to believe is what you want to believe. In the end, I passed every test with flying colors. Then the trial started, and it was the first time in a long time that I had to communicate with so many people. Luckily, since most of the information related to my case was classified, it was a closed trial. I was even given a defense attorney, but it looked like, and was in fact, a mere formality. It was immediately clear who knew the trial was pure theater and who didn't. People from the first category talked to me as little as they could, only according to protocol, while those from the second category, there were much fewer of those, actually tried to get to the truth. They were often surprised by my dull reactions and seeming disinterest in my own fate. It was so surprising when Nikolai Anakin was just a prop for the triumph of justice, the proof to unmask the blatant conspiracy of the genocidal communist regime. That's when I really understood how small the difference was between the Reds and the Stripes and Stars when it came to money and imperial ambitions. If you're lucky, through the lens of human history, you might end up as two dates with a dash between them in a school book. How many lives hide behind that line? Perhaps in 20 years, Lorena would be mentioned in an article in the big Soviet encyclopedia. Ito would be honored with a monument. Cheryl Winters would become the first female president. Who would remember the nameless Japanese school kid with Russian roots? All of them had their freedom of choice, the unlimited freedom that at some point became a power of its own, the proof of absolute superiority of the individual above others. Money, power, and millions of followers that blindly believe in the idea of the inviolability of private property or the victory of the worldwide proletariat revolution become fertile ground for the formation of ideologies that are transcendental in nature. And then it's them that control the people, replacing freedom with their will. And neither a ruler nor a simple worker notice that they are willing to sacrifice everything for the triumph of what they believe in. The only difference is that a regular person can only put his or her life on the altar of that idea, while a ruler can sacrifice millions. But history often moves forward against people's will. Who said that every era of our civilization is unequivocally defined by some higher pattern? Ideologies are like viruses. The only difference between the two is that a person infected by one ideology isn't likely to contract another. They spread from individual to individual, capturing more and more space. They are inherited, integrated into our cultural code. One can't imagine the population of a certain region of the earth without attaching them to a certain ideology or religion, which are basically one and the same. All Russians are communists, all Americans are capitalists, and all Japanese honor their elders in our social hierarchies. And so we find ourselves in a world where human rights are more important than humans themselves. It's now more right and prestigious to defend abstract concepts like refugees, freedom fighters, prisoners of conscience, and minorities. On the other hand, it's enough to claim oppression to immediately gain the sympathy of millions. Most likely that's where it would end, but you might get lucky. For example, someone might organize a charity for you, from which you might get something after all the taxes and employees' salaries are deducted. In the end, our civilization moves further away from the individual person and towards a simulacrum of a person. Reality becoming more and more complicated every year, no longer has room for billions of people, each their own individual, and allocates them to controlled groups based on religion, race, social status, and income. And woe is not those in the poorest or the most oppressed groups, but those that don't fit any of them. Testifying against myself and my dead parents, I became one of those people. The trial became, in essence, a formality and ended quickly. The most important thing was to uncover the criminal activity of the Soviets, then quickly remove all the actors from the scene. Or they might say something they shouldn't have. Under different circumstances, it would have probably been easier to eliminate me. Since my face was in the newspapers and on television for some time, the risk of getting involved in a scandal with those human rights activists was too great for Cheryl Winters. And who was I to judge her motives and try to guess what that woman, who managed to so easily outplay the KGB and manipulate the Japanese like puppets, thought? The trial ended and the sentence was harsh. 10 years. I only had to hope that Catherine's mother would keep to her word. Japanese society traditionally treats foreigners badly, and Japanese prison is the last place foreigners would want to end up. I wouldn't want to recall all the fear and humiliation I had to go through there. Luckily, my sentence didn't last long, as something unexpected happened after a few months. I received a general pardon. I had no doubt that Mrs. Winters had a hand in it. At first glance, everything was finally behind me, but unfulfilled hopes can hurt more than physical restrictions. Don't trust, don't fear, don't beg. Himitsu didn't visit me once in prison. I attributed it to the fact that not much time had passed yet and patiently waited for any news from her. However, once I was released, I found out that she had moved. Shit. Along with Ito. They'd sold their house, and other people were living there. First, I could calm myself with the thought that her father had hidden her from me again. This time somewhere other than her grandma's house, whom I stalked for several days, to no effect. My house had been seized by the authorities. I didn't know whether they had the right to do so or not, and I had neither the money nor the knowledge to sue them. Kyosuke was afraid to let an ex-convict live at his place, explained it away by saying his mother had forbidden it. First, he helped me financially. I rented a tiny room in the suburbs and spent all my time trying to find Himitsu. Found everyone in her family to the 7th generation, called even the most remote relative, came to school again and again, trying to find out where she had been transferred to, but in the end only learned that her father had collected her documents in person. Time passed, and more I noticed no longer felt my failures so strongly. In the beginning, I had been overtaken by desperation, but then I gradually began to accept my new life, the fact that I would never see Himitsu again. The surprise, the shock, the inability to quickly adapt to new changed situation. It's all understandable, can be fought, lived with. It's worse when you start thinking that things are fine the way they are. After all, I did everything I could, searched everywhere, asked everyone. Japan is huge. Himitsu could be anywhere. What was I supposed to do? I had no money, no connections, most importantly, no hope. The pittance Kyosuke had given me soon ran out, and I had to postpone my search for Himitsu until further opportunity under threat of starvation. Tried to contact Arena, someone from the embassy, but to no avail. The KGB seemed to have forgotten about my existence. Soviet diplomats politely refused my advances. Since you're a citizen, boy, live in Japan. All these petty details, formalities, bureaucracy, and administrative barriers are utterly repulsive to the vast Russian soul. However, by some unfortunate coincidence, I wasn't born an aristocrat with an estate and 100 serfs. When I finally came to my senses, spring had started. The school year had ended. It was too late to go back to school. I couldn't even think of trying to re-enroll and get a diploma. I simply had no time left for studying. I started searching for a job, but it was almost as if every employer in Tokyo had a blacklist with me at the very top. Of course, I couldn't exclude the possibility. It could be Ito's or even Mrs. Winter's revenge. It only made it look even weirder that I had been released so early. And my criminal record, I couldn't forget about that. In the end, I managed to get a job at a port as a dock worker. I only had enough money for rent, some food without much flavor or nutrition, and alcohol. A bottle of sake after a shift, 2 bottles, 3. Could no longer fall asleep without that. I didn't connect with any of my colleagues. Maybe because I was a gaijin. Or maybe because I still consider myself smarter and above menial laborers. The hubris and snobbiness of a person stuck in a pigsty towards his companions in misfortune won't get to describe my character better. Unnoticeably, the thought that Himitsu didn't want to see me started to come more and more to mind. Otherwise, she would have found a way. I try not to think about that. If she had an opportunity, Himitsu would have definitely contacted me. And Mandita was keeping her under lock and key. Yeah, right, in a dungeon, in a cage, on a chain. Unfortunately, this excuse just sounded ridiculous. What if something had happened? No, I don't want to believe that. But time heals. It erases memories and feelings, slowly but incessantly. Time can make mountains disappear, let alone a fragile and unstable person. It passionately dims the light of even seemingly eternal love and wipes all memories of it from people's minds. And there I was, coming to my senses in a dirty alley a year later, rain falling from the sky blocked by laden heavy clouds, washing off the last remnants of color from the world, turning existence into a canvas filled with endless gray paint. As if an artist, disappointed with their painting, had thrown a bucket of whitewash over it. If only I could start everything anew. If I could know every danger that awaited me in advance, knew what I had to say and do. Damn it, would have brought an almanac with sports statistics and handed it to myself in the past. But in real life, I was stuck in a dead end that I couldn't escape by tracing my path back. Today, I drank through the money I had borrowed from a buddy until payday. Still had to survive until then somehow. And although I was more preoccupied with the thought that I had nothing to buy booze with, the rain grew stronger and I remembered Himitsu's smile, her puffed cheeks, and choked on silent sobs. Where was she now? What was she doing? I had come to terms, forgotten, and stopped, unable to find the energy to keep fighting it pointless. Any sensible person would have probably done the same, but not everyone would have stooped so low. Oh yes, I felt I'd hit the bottom, the very abyss of the human anthill. Only the homeless and criminals were worth less than me. My only difference from them was purely formal. My sins had been served, and I was renting a place to live. In reality, I had long stopped hoping that my life would ever be the same again. What's the main difference between an outcast and a normal person? The former's pathetic appearance, poverty, sickness, the contempt that they receive from others? Or is it something else, not obvious at first glance? Now I knew the answer. What breaks a person is the loss of hope, not any external factors. Just yesterday you believed in a better future, if only a little, if only in your heart, knowing in your mind that all the best is long left behind, and ahead there is only loneliness, emptiness, and death. And today you make peace with it. Finally look into the face of what's coming with courage. Stop deceiving yourself with daydreams. You. I'd become what I despised my entire life. I saw my archenemy in the mirror, but it wasn't a devil with a sarcastic smile. Neither was it Providence hidden in a black robe or the nameless mask of a hostile society. It was my own face, haggard and seemingly aged by a dozen years. Well, a discarded person no longer has any right to complain. Neither do they need to. Don't trust, don't fear, don't beg. Taken out of the equation, they no longer have to follow its rules. Perhaps this was the cunning revenge of Cheryl Winters. She knew I'd find it harder to be free than imprisoned. In prison, I would be suffering, physically and mentally, but would have to adapt to certain rules and laws, become part of a certain group. Here now, I was merely a lonely, desperate lowlife, the slag of consumer society, recycled and deemed no longer suitable for use. Was it really Catherine's mother's plans? Or did I just make it all up as I spent long nights staring at the ceiling with my eyes clouded by cheap sake? Anyway, it was too late to look for someone to blame. Neither was there any sense to it. That was also a distinctive Russian trait. Although I'd never liked to shift the blame for what happened to me to others, simply because it wouldn't change a thing. I could blame Mrs. Winters, Ito, the Japanese, the KGB, even Himitsu, but it wouldn't bring her back. And then, I was sure of it, the last stage would come. Acceptance. I'd stop considering my job the bottom of my life, start going to a bar with my colleagues, rent a bigger flat, maybe even find a girlfriend. An ugly fat Japanese woman that would laugh with and without reason, baring her crooked teeth and squinting her already barely visible eyes. And then there would be children. Probably get a promotion, would be able to get a mortgage for a house in the suburbs. Then there would be retirement and death. Was it all Himitsu's fault? Hot raindrops ran down my cheeks, though those were most likely my tears. Strangely enough, I hadn't cried in a while. A year or so. Last time it happened was when I first realized I wouldn't be able to find Himitsu. This was probably my last. Perhaps I lived even better than some rich and famous people. After all, I was still alive, as opposed to some singer girl who had died recently. In the life of a normal Japanese worker, there is no need to cry, maybe only regret the years pointlessly spent. I was sure that by the time my brain would be so full of alcohol and fat that, as part of this necroevolution, the ability to experience such complex emotions would die out on its own. So today I was saying goodbye to my past, to my short-lived love for Himitsu. I was saying goodbye to Kyosuke, Michael, and the big empty house taken by the state as compensation for debts that came out of nowhere. I was saying goodbye to my youth and all my foolish dreams of happiness. Happiness, as I understood it, was completely unnecessary for an adult person. Moreover, the very idea of it was harmful and destabilizing for a sensible member of society. That's why I had become to survive. And despite everything, I had absolutely no desire to die. Perhaps I was just afraid of death. But most likely there was a different reason that was sitting deep inside that I couldn't quite comprehend myself. Like the instinctive fear of the unknown. It's better to be like this here, where I know everything, than to go there, where I know nothing. And most importantly, I never, not even for a second, allowed myself to think that I'd be able to love anyone but Himitsu. Well, so be it. Our story may have ended, I may have lost faith, and life may have proved the needlessness of hope, but in a different world, not necessarily better, but a different one. It was snowing, not raining, so wretchedly, and a different Nikko-kun was making a snowman with a different Himitsu. Is that how the good ending actually ends? Okay. Hey, like I said, I'm not surprised. That's entirely what I expected. Not entirely what I expected, but I said I was going to leave it up to fate. And fate said, hey, bad ending. Alright. But now it's time to load the game and go for that good ending. Alright, Ms. Winters, I think I'm going to say fuck you. I'll take my chances. At the very least, I need some kind of guarantee. Cheryl Winters looked annoyed. You're making an enormous mistake, Nikolai. Remember, that's not just your fate that depends on you. I understand, but I have no reason to believe you. At least let me see Himitsu first, and then we'll get back to this conversation. I was hoping you were smarter than this. She scoffed contemptuously, stood up and walked out of the room, locking the door behind her. Catherine's mother was one of those women whose appearance alone inspires respect and even a certain awe. The silence left in her wake rang accusingly, as if scolding me for making the wrong choice. But the choice was made, and even if I would regret it, that would come later, after I had endured this torturous waiting. The cramped room seemed to have become even more so, the silence broken only by the monotonous sound of the fan, only a gray wall visible behind the small shadow. How often do we regret what we haven't done in life, or have done wrongly, the people we have lost? I saw no escape. Mrs. Winters' promises sounded like empty words. This entire situation resembled a silly game. Finally, a key turned in the keyhole quietly, the door opened, and in the doorway stood Ito. I was tired of being surprised, but I still didn't expect to see him of all people here. Ito coming to the rescue? Holy fuck, let's go! Nikolai, we have 5 minutes to get you out of here. He threw a bag at me that I caught in reflex. Change into this. Inside was a blue uniform like the ones mailmen wear. What does this mean? You either ask me questions or we run. Himitsu? I asked briefly, clenching the bag in my hands. She's fine. I've taken care of it. We have to get you out of this building. Why are you helping me? Probably shouldn't have argued with Ito. I had to either trust him or wait for Mrs. Winter's return. The second option looked idiotic no matter what. Of course, that woman didn't lack for cunning, sure, but I found it impossible to believe that she had planned this too. Why would she? Do you want to stay here? Just yesterday, I wouldn't have believed a single word a single word of his, but at that moment, what difference did it make who exactly was offering me salvation? At least Ito would take me out of this room, and that was better than remaining in prison by the CIA. Besides, I'd rejected Catherine's mother's offer, so the only sensible response I could expect from them was a bullet to the head. Just so you know, I still think you're a terrible person. You may call me even a pot, just don't put me in the oven, he said in Russian, which made me smile despite myself. Let's fucking go! We walked down the dark corridors to an underground garage and then outside. The bright daylight blinded me and I couldn't quite figure out where I was right away. We stopped. It was the square near the Kobayashi Corporation building. That was actually no surprise. Seems too easy. Was this another trick? Nobody thought you would run away. They have such a low opinion of me, why do you need me? If you refused to do what Winters needed you to, I realized you really do love Himitsu. What's the connection here? I really didn't understand. The resulting investigation would have obviously affected me. Consequently, Himitsu. In the best case, I'd only lose my job, but in the worst case... He sighed and shifted his gaze to the sky. It was pierced by the spike of the Kobayashi Corporation building. Of course, she promised me that everything would be fine. Her safety is guaranteed. What'll happen to you now? Don't worry, I've been in the field for a while. I know how to take care of myself. You'll have to take care of my daughter. Can you promise me that you will? Of course, I said in a too serious a voice. Everything was changing too quickly, in particular what I thought of this man. In the end, Ito had been doing everything for Himitsu's safety. I've already contacted the KGB. I'll pick you up at the place we agreed on. He looked at his watch again. They'll realize you're gone soon. We have to go. Fuck yeah, let's go. We took a taxi to the suburbs of Tokyo. On the way there, Ito told me that many years ago he was assigned to spy on Soviet engineers who had fled to Japan. They were working on a secret project for Kobayashi Corporation, but soon were suspected of spying for the USSR. Double agents, I guess that's what it's called. The corporation wasn't the only party participating in the project. There were also Americans at their head, Cheryl Winters. Ito himself was mostly just a small fry, a support agent from the government. He knew neither about the true goal of the project nor the part that my parents had worked on. He also had nothing to do with their death. According to him, that is. But now I had far fewer reasons to doubt his words. When we arrived, I had to deal with Irina's snarky smile, and then he finally saw Himitsu. Felt as if we had parted at least a year ago. She was alright. For a long time she was saying her goodbyes to her father, crying, not wanting to leave. Gave him a firm handshake, realizing that it was unlikely we would ever see each other again. The Americans may have thought me a simple high school kid before, but now to them I would become an enemy of the state. When we were put on a Soviet cargo ship in the port, Himitsu was no longer so enthusiastic about the USSR. The cabin where you could barely stand at full height, the rocking, and the terrible food probably wasn't her idea of a spy's life. Meanwhile, I wasn't worried about any of that at all. I was happy that I had finally managed to escape the endless cycle of paranoia and anxious expectation of danger. Besides, something finally filled the empty spot in my heart, the one that had appeared after my parents' death and my breakup with Catherine. Their place was taken by my love for Himitsu, a feeling that brought some meaning to my existence again. So what if many difficulties and hardships lay ahead of us? So what if we would need to adapt to another country and lifestyle? Those really are trifles so long as you're with the person you love. Of course I wanted Himitsu to think the same. However, her knowledge of Russian helped to somewhat mitigate the significant difference in cultures, especially in the beginning. Despite the accent, she didn't stand out much in terms of her looks, and that helped us look like any normal young Soviet family. We were put up in a town in the central part of the country, but were allowed to meet with our relatives. Himitsu met her mother for the first time in a long while, and as always, spent a lot of time crying. The one-bedroom apartment and the realities of Soviet daily life were quite different from my childhood memories. The 240-centimeter tall ceilings and the kitchen of 4 square meters was probably the height of dreams for most of the proletariat, but to me, at first, it seemed to be a parody of a real home, like a dollhouse. Our handlers from the KGB insisted we had to blend in completely, and I would have been pitied the normal Soviet citizen if I hadn't become one. Of course, there were also positives. To me personally, the people seemed more sincere and honest than the Japanese, and more hospitable once you got to know them better. Himitsu, on the other hand, just couldn't come to understand that her usual politeness was excessive there. We were given high school diplomas and allocated jobs. I became an assistant miller at a factory, while Himitsu got the position of shopkeeper at a bakery. At first she protested vehemently, insisting that she wanted to do further study, but it was too dangerous. At least that's what they said. But they also assured us that in 5 years we would be free to lead our own lives without the control of the state security service. Of course, given my experience with Reina, I didn't exactly believe that, but 5 years is a long time. Anything could happen to me and to the country in general. Just a month ago, I sincerely believed that I would spend my entire life in that old Tokyo home. A week ago, I wasn't even sure I would stay alive for any significant length of time. And today, I wasn't only alive and healthy, but also with the girl I loved. Why can't most people believe in miracles, even when they happen before their very eyes? The reason for it is our habit of searching for a logical explanation for anything that happens to us. 100 or 200 years ago, we lived with gods and demons, spirits of our ancestors, and pantheistic entities. Today, our world has expanded significantly to neighboring planets and stars, other galaxies and parallel universes, but the internal world of each individual has shriveled incredibly. We were left alone with ourselves in the endless void of space. Where do you find room for something magical in it? Aww, she looks so sweet still. That is how it seemed to me. Magical. They were sitting in the kitchen and drinking tea as if that's how it was always meant to be. Ooh. So Himitsu's ending is a bit more funky, huh? I like it, but I'm not gonna lie, Not Too Late was definitely the better bop. In a Soviet kitchen thousands of kilometers away from Japan. In a Soviet kitchen after work in a Soviet factory. In a Soviet apartment with real entresols. In a Soviet apartment where in a cabinet made out of Soviet chipboard our new still smelling of ink Soviet passports lay. But still with the girl I'd known my entire life. Or was she a different one?
What are you thinking about?
Himitsu asked me with a smile. I just can't believe it's all real. It's as if an alarm is about to go off and I'll wake up. And then we have to go to school. She laughed, as genuinely as ever, but in a more adult way now, after that had no place for naivety.
You're probably happy they didn't make us finish our studies.
Of course I am. Like I need any more of that bliss in my life. And anyway, Himitsu was getting more and more used to her new life, and with each passing day, having met all the neighbors and even made a very good impression on the local old ladies. Unlike me, I was immediately labeled as a weirdo here as well. Apparently that was my destiny.
And then Tanya said,
She was telling me about what had happened at work. Couldn't stop being surprised by how much happiness she could find in absolutely mundane things. Don't you miss it? I'd never asked her that question before, probably because I was scared of how she might react.
Do I miss what?
Japan. Himitsu took some time to reply.
Of course I do. How can't I? But my home is here now, with you.
Well, I grew embarrassed.
Nika-kun, do you still feel guilty?
Hey, we talked about that. Honorific suffixes are alien to the Russian language and just confuse the people who speak it.
But nobody can hear us here.
Are you sure about that? I demonstratively looked around the kitchen. Walls have ears too, I said in a stage whisper. Let them listen. We had nothing to hide, and I was genuinely glad about that.
So what do you want me to call you then?
What everyone does. Kolya. I blurted out with a second thought.
Fine. Kolya.
Coming from her, it sounded completely wrong. Alright, let's think about this harder. She took a sip of her tea and frowned.
You're always like this. No matter what happens in the country, one thing is consistent. Nika-kun's tomfoolery.
Where did you even learn a word like that?
I got a library card.
Himitsu fired back in a good nature. Do they have manga there?
I don't know. Go and take a look. And if you don't find any, borrow something more intellectual.
More intellectual than manga? She sighed and said in a totally different tone as if daydreaming.
One day I will meet my prince.
Vasya from the axle bearing production line. I remarked immediately.
And we'll create a social square.
A social unit. I corrected her in the same swift fashion.
A social unit.
It wasn't the first time Himitsu had hinted at marriage. But marriage can be faulty too, as they said at our factory. Although our handlers from the KGB were on her side. Cohabitation wasn't a crime in the Soviet Union, but it was frowned upon. I knew that time would come sooner or later. Who shall we take as witnesses?
It's really a strange world, you know? Like in, well,
A murder? Chimed in.
yes, just like those at a crime scene.
Some people actually see us as criminals. Himitsu lowered her eyes. In the US and Japan. I finished nonetheless. Not only us. Oh, that was Himitsu. You mean your dad? I'm sure he's doing alright. But that didn't sound very reassuring. He's a professional after all. Wait a year or two, he'll definitely contact us. Maybe he'll even babysit his grandchildren.
Grandchildren?
Himitsu blushed. Well, you would have to one day. I averted my gaze as if embarrassed by something. You thought about it yourself. Don't tell me that you've been living together for... And you... I was rambling, unable to even finish my sentences, trying to justify myself.
Mm-hmm.
Himitsu just mumbled vaguely in response. So...
Yes.
Children were indeed something I hadn't yet thought about. Did I want them? In reality, not just hypothetically. Of course, our income and living conditions were quite favorable to a bundle of joy, but if we thought like that, we'd wait all the way to retirement. They weren't good, yes, but they could become better tomorrow.
I still want to become a teacher.
Himitsu changed the subject.
A primary school one, at least.
Why not a Russian teacher?
Because.
She smiled, and again it occurred to me that Himitsu seemed to have become older. Not so much in appearance as in the impression she made on those around her. Her facial expression, movements, gestures, and a new serious gleam in her eyes. Not to even mention how easily she had adapted to this alien environment. I was finding it much harder and mostly endured thanks to a new feeling I had discovered. A strong and confident love. I want a boy.
Can't make one on order.
She grunted. And then a girl. Maybe.
I'm not an incubator.
I always thought you wanted a big family.
I do.
We had to either change the subject or immediately make love to each other. However, I was too tired after my shift, so I decided not to prolong the awkward pause. Well, then you'll have to change your surname.
What do you mean?
After the wedding.
Ah, yeah.
She said as if she didn't understand what this was about.
I'm quite happy with your new one.
Following the KGB's recommendation, I had to change my surname, so I took my mother's maiden name, which was logical. Thank God. I sighed and took a sip of my chamomile tea, by now cold.
Nico-kun,
She said to me, somewhat hesitantly. What?
if it's a boy, what will we name him?
Dave. Damn. You know, that ended a lot quicker than the depressing ending, but holy shit, there it is. The good ending of Himitsu's route. I liked it. I liked it. It was good. It was good. Do I think it stacks up to Kagome's route? No. I do like Kagome's route better. I do. But was this a bad route? No. No, no. I enjoyed it. I enjoyed it. I felt like there was just... I don't know. It's the thing that Catherine said. Like, I'm not gonna lie. I'm telling you right now. I already said this earlier, but I'm repeating it. Since we did not get any answers as to what the fucking problem was with Himitsu and Catherine way back in the day, Catherine's next. Alright? Catherine's next. I'm sorry, Ellie. I do like Ellie. I want to see her out. I've heard good things about it. Like, I was looking on VNDB the other day. I was just looking at the reviews, and like everyone's reviews are like, oh yeah, Ellie's route, mwah, perfect. But also some of those people were also shitting on Kagome's route, so I won't quite take their opinion as like, yeah, that's probably what I'm gonna see. Could be I could have the total opposite experience, be like, oh wow, Kagome's route, bang, and Ellie's route, gross. I doubt I'll have that though. I don't know. There's something about Himitsu though. There's something there. And that's why I really want to go down Catherine's route. I really do. I need to know what happened so I can judge Himitsu accurately. Because if what happened is what I think happened, then it's going to paint this route in a whole new light. But regardless of what did happen, I just want to know what happened. I just want to know what happened. All right. Let's speed up the credits here. That was nice. I enjoyed it. All right, and once again, we're back at the main title menu. So, obviously, this is where I'm going to end this video here. in the next one, we will start up Catherine's route because I need to know. I need to know what happened. I have to. Ellie's route, it can wait. I have no questions regarding Ellie's route. I have no questions regarding Ellie or anything, or her connections to anyone. I'm looking forward to the route, but I have no questions there. Nothing needs to be answered. Catherine's big explosion at the end of Himitsu's route, I need answers. I need to know what that was about. I need it. But like I said, gonna end this video here. So thank you to everyone watching. I'll see you in the next one. Peace.